Tonight, you might order shrimp for dinner. You'll peel it, dip it in sauce, eat it without a second thought. But right now, somewhere in your kitchen, a cockroach might be doing something almost identical to what that shrimp just did. Scavenging, eating scraps, surviving off whatever it can find. Because here's the part nobody tells you. Zoom in close enough, and a shrimp doesn't look like a fish at all. It looks like an armored insect with legs, antennae, and a segmented shell. You'd think the difference between your dinner and your nightmare is about cleanliness, or danger, or maybe just taste. But that's not quite right. Scientists actually have a name for what's really happening in your brain when you make that decision. It's called the disgust response, and psychologist Paul Rozin spent decades mapping exactly how it works. And once you understand it, you will never look at your dinner plate the same way again. Stay till the end. The last part will change how you think about everything you refuse to eat. Let's start with the body itself. What actually is a shrimp? Biologically, a shrimp is a crustacean, and a cockroach is an insect. But here's what's fascinating. Crustaceans and insects both belong to the same larger group, arthropods, animals with exoskeletons, jointed legs, and segmented bodies. In 2010, researchers led by Jerome Regier published a study in the journal Nature that reshaped how scientists see this family tree. Their genetic analysis suggested insects didn't evolve separately from crustaceans at all. Insects likely evolved from something crustacean-like, which means the roach on your kitchen floor and the shrimp on your plate share a deeper ancestry than either shares with a fish. Sit with that for a second. The animal you're afraid to look at and the animal you're excited to eat are closer cousins than you and a goldfish. So what killed the shrimp's reputation as basically a bug? Marketing did. Imagine you're at a fish market 300 years ago. Fishermen aren't calling shrimp sea insects. They're calling them delicacies, wrapped in butter, served whole, sold as luxury. Meanwhile, roaches were showing up somewhere very different. Not oceans, sewers. Not dinner tables, garbage piles. And that difference in address changed everything about how we'd eventually feel about them. But here's what's even stranger. Shrimp behavior isn't actually that far from roach behavior. Wild shrimp are scavengers. They eat algae, dead organic matter, and decaying material on the ocean floor. The exact same survival strategy a roach uses in your walls. So the disgust isn't really about what they eat, it's about where we imagine them eating it. Imagine two identical creatures, same biology, same diet, same instincts. One lives in a wild ocean, the other lives in your bathroom. Your brain assigns danger based on proximity, not biology. This is where Paul Rozin's research becomes so important. In 1987, Rozin and psychologist April Fallon published a paper in the journal Psychological Review called A Perspective on Disgust. Their theory was simple, but it rewired how psychologists understood food rejection. Disgust isn't primarily about taste, it's about contamination. Your brain isn't asking, will this taste bad? It's asking, will this make me sick or mark me as unclean? And that question gets answered almost entirely by culture, not chemistry. Here's an experiment that captures this perfectly. Rozin found that people would refuse to drink juice that had merely touched a sterilized dead cockroach. Even when told clearly the cockroach was sterile, harmless, scientifically clean. Logic said drink it. Disgust said no. Because once your mind attaches an idea of contamination to something, facts don't erase it. And it doesn't stop at juice. Rozin also found that people refused soup stirred with a brand new comb, or a brand new fly swatter still in its packaging. Never used, never dirty, still rejected. Because your brain isn't reacting to the object itself, it's reacting to the category the object belongs to. Once something is filed under contaminant, it stays filed there, no matter what you're told. But then here's the twist that breaks the whole illusion. 2 billion people on Earth eat insects regularly. According to a 2013 report by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Over 1,900 insect species are consumed as food worldwide. Crickets in Thailand, ants in parts of Mexico, grasshoppers in Uganda, mealworms in the Netherlands, sold in grocery stores as sustainable protein. To someone raised eating crickets, your shrimp cocktail might look exactly as strange as a roach looks to you. So what does that tell you? Disgust isn't hardwired into your biology, it's installed, like software, somewhere between the ages of 2 and 7. Imagine you're a toddler again. You don't yet know a cockroach is gross. You just see a small moving creature, curious, not repulsed. Then, somewhere along the way, a parent flinches. A sibling screams. A cartoon villain has roaches crawling on him in a horror scene. And your brain quietly files away a rule. This equals danger. By the time you're an adult, that rule feels like instinct, but it was installed, not born. Meanwhile, shrimp got the opposite installation. Cooked in butter at fancy restaurants, served at weddings, photographed on Instagram in elegant white bowls. Same biological category, completely different emotional programming. So what did the shrimp industry actually do differently? It controlled the story. It removed the legs before you saw them on your plate. It gave shrimp a new name in fine dining: prawns, scampi, langoustine. It photographed shrimp swimming in clear blue ocean water, never crawling through decaying matter on the seafloor, even though that's exactly what many of them do. Compare that to the cockroaches image. No marketing team, no rebrand, no elegant lighting, just decades of horror movies, health inspector warnings, and late-night pest control commercials. The roach never had a publicist, the shrimp did. But here's something even more revealing. This isn't just about insects and crustaceans, it's about every animal you've ever refused to eat. In many parts of the world, dogs are family members, sleeping on beds, celebrating birthdays. But in certain regions of Vietnam and parts of China, dog meat has historically been consumed, especially during colder months, believed by some to bring warmth or strength. Meanwhile, cows, worshipped and protected as sacred in Hindu tradition across much of India, are raised specifically for slaughter in the United States, ground into billions of burgers every single year. Neither culture is right or wrong about the animal itself. The cow didn't change, the dog didn't change, the story around them did. So here's the rhetorical question worth sitting with. If a roach could survive underwater in coral reefs, and a shrimp could survive in your kitchen walls, would you have grown up eating one and screaming at the other? Or would the story have simply flipped? But wait, there's a wrinkle in the shrimp story itself. Shrimp isn't universally accepted either. In Jewish dietary law, kashrut requires that seafood have both fins and scales to be considered kosher. Shrimp, lacking scales entirely, is explicitly forbidden, right alongside shellfish like lobster and crab. In Islamic dietary law, most schools of thought classify shrimp as halal, since it lives in water. But the debate around shellfish more broadly has continued for centuries among scholars. So even the animal we've spent this entire video calling universally acceptable isn't universal at all. To over 1 billion people, following these traditions, a plate of shrimp is exactly as forbidden as a plate of cockroach would be to you. Imagine standing at that same seafood counter, but this time, shrimp is the thing you were taught since childhood never to touch. Your stomach would turn exactly the same way at a shrimp cocktail that someone else's stomach turns at a fried cricket. Same reflex, same wiring, different installation. Here's another twist most people never think about. Shellfish, including shrimp, is one of the most common food allergies in adults, according to research published by the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. For millions of people, a single bite can trigger a reaction severe enough to require emergency treatment. Meanwhile, insect protein has been proposed by some food scientists as a potential lower allergy risk alternative for the future, which means the safe, elegant food might quietly be more dangerous to your body than the one your mind labels as filth. Your gut reaction and your actual biology don't always agree. So what does this mean when you zoom out even further? Every single food rule you've ever followed was built the same way. Not from pure logic, not from pure safety, from a mixture of geography, religion, marketing, and whatever happened to disgust the people around you when you were small. Let's go one layer deeper. Anthropologist Marvin Harris spent much of his career studying exactly this question. Why do different societies eat completely different animals, even when nutrition and taste don't explain the gap? In his research through the 1970s and 80s, Harris argued that food taboos often trace back to practical survival logic from centuries ago. Logic that outlived its original purpose. Pigs, for example, were labeled unclean in parts of the Middle East, partly because, in hot, arid climates, pigs competed with humans for shade, water, and food, while providing little in return compared to animals like goats or sheep. The rule made sense once, but it survived long after the original reason disappeared, hardening into religious and cultural law that still shapes what billions of people eat today. Which means some of your own food rules might be fossils, leftover logic from a world that no longer exists, still quietly running in the background of your mind. Imagine you were born in a different country, into a different kitchen, with a different set of smells drifting from the stove every evening. In that life, fried grasshoppers might be the snack sold outside your school gates. Crunchy, salted, completely normal. In that life, the animal you currently love might be the one that makes people flinch. You would have grown up loving what you now fear, and fearing, or simply ignoring, what you now love. Same brain, same species, completely different map of disgust, drawn entirely by geography. Now imagine you're a child again, at the exact moment one of your food rules got installed. Maybe it was a stew you saw prepared visibly, insects still present, no plastic wrap softening the image. Maybe it was a documentary showing roaches swarming a kitchen at night, set to horror music. That single moment could still be steering your fork away from certain plates decades later. You don't remember the moment, but your stomach does. Think about how strange that actually is. An entire species can be labeled unclean, not because of what it does to your body, but because of what it once did to your ancestors' economy, generations before you were born. You inherited the verdict without ever seeing the evidence. Now think about your own plate again. Somewhere in your family history, someone made a decision, maybe practical, maybe religious, maybe just squeamish, about which animals were acceptable. That decision got passed down, quietly, at dinner tables, in disgusted faces, in casual comments you barely noticed as a kid. By the time it reached you, it didn't feel like a decision anymore. It felt like fact. So what does all of this actually mean about you? It means the line between food and filth was never really about the animal. It was drawn by story, geography, and repetition, then handed to you before you were old enough to question it. And once a line is drawn early enough in your life, it stops feeling like a choice. It starts feeling like truth. So the next time your stomach turns at the sight of a cockroach, or you casually order a plate of shrimp without a second thought, remember this. You didn't choose that reaction. You inherited it. Somewhere, a version of you existed before this rule was installed. A version that looked at both creatures with the same blank curiosity. That version of you didn't know which one was food and which one was filth. Someone else decided that for you. And you've been living by that decision ever since.